There's 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now. That's billions of wasted charitable dollars. The traditional model is punch a hole in the ground and on to the next one. And there's no real training. There's no real relationship. It's not locally affordable. It's not locally accessible. I think we have to think long-term and also follow through. When you drive your car 3,000 miles, it's going to need a oil change, or, tires are going to wear out and you need to get it maintained. And same thing with a water well. That's serving thousands of people. Like you have to think that way.
Stoked to have you here on the Mark Divine Show. Thanks for coming to me all the way from Austin, Texas, the country of Texas, I should say, probably.
Yeah, the Republic.
Starting to look
Republic of Texas.
The Republic of Texas.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone, this is Mark Divine, founder of SealFit and Unbeatable Mind, and I'm super stoked to announce that my new book, Uncommon, is due out from St. Martin's Press this summer, July 16th. And we've launched a pre-order campaign. You can learn more about that at readuncommon.com to try to get early awareness for the book, which I hope will help a lot of people, where I go and do a deep dive on the 5 mountains of personal mastery: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. Uncommon, simple principles for an extraordinary life. Check it out at readuncommon.com. And thank you for your support and being part of the change that you want to see in this world. Hoo-yah, Divine out.
I am a Texan. I guess I was born in Mississippi, but I got here when I was 4 months old, and I lived all over the state, all over the country too. But I love Texas. It's a great place. And Austin's different. We got nature. We just moved to a new home, and we have a trailhead outside our door, and it's just a beautiful place, and a lot of beautiful people here too, like just in soul and spirit, and we're really enjoying it.
That's really cool. Well, good luck down there. I mentioned to you before we started, but I've had a ton of my friends kind of bail from California. Don't let the door hit me in the ass, and head down to Austin, and they love it down there.
Yeah, it's a great place.
I haven't made the leap yet. I've got a few properties here, and my wife was born in LA, lived in Coronado for, bulk of her life. Now we live in Encinitas. So we got it nice. So we just have to pay the sunshine tax.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the crazy tax.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you and your wife doing some practices together. Do you mind sharing some of that?
Yeah, no, let's start there. That's pretty awesome, because I want to hear about your new wife, by the way. It's congratulations.
Thank you.
Proposing to her in front of the Sphinx in Egypt at the pyramids. That doesn't get any more romantic than that, I don't think.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've mentioned this a couple times, but I've been saying here and there that a couple that trains and practices together stays together, because, just like you with your MMA training or me with the SEALs, like when you train with someone hard, you kind of lay everything bare. You know what I mean? Like there's no hiding, right? There's no hiding, and you're suffering together. You're doing something disciplined together. And it took me years to figure that out. My wife and I, she would go to her yoga and I would go to my thing and my martial arts. And even when I had the CrossFit gym, I would do my work with the SEAL candidates and she would do her separate thing. And finally, a few years ago, we said, why are we doing that? Let's just, let's train together. And so we started this ritual. So we get up around 6 or 6:15, depending on, no alarm clock, just kind of whenever we wake up. And we immediately begin our practice. And that includes a number of things, so gratitude and some journaling and reflection and, kind of like some chit chat, but mostly internally focused. And then we move into some box breathing together, which is a practice I've been teaching for years. And then we meditate, right? And then we have a smoothie. So all that maybe takes like an hour. We take our time. Like that morning time is just precious for us. In fact, when I can, which is 90% of the time, I don't schedule anything before 10 in the morning. Just so I can, really, really, I call win in the mind before you step foot in the battlefield.
Wow.
Every day is that foundation, right? Then we have a smoothie and head down to our office, which is also our little training center. And I've been doing and teaching yoga for years. So I leave, we've got a little like divine yoga routine that we go through. It's about a half hour. We do it together. And then we do our high intensity functional workout, which often includes weight training. And then we do our sauna and cold plunge.
Wow.
So it's credible. And that happens a minimum of 5 times a week. And then when we don't come down here, we're doing a good chunk of that. We might not, on a rest day, we might not do the workout. So I'm kind of curious, how does your practice and training with your now new wife?
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's really interesting. I love what you said there, how y'all connect and spend that time together, and that it's precious, almost sacred for you, at least 5 days a week. We have something similar. We've been together 3 years, and Amy inspires me more so than probably any of my coaches, any of my training partners. And they inspire me in one way, but she inspires me just by watching her daily practices. Whether I'm going to do it or not, she's definitely going to do it. And so I mean, I do it more times than not, and probably 5 out of 7 days of the week. But she is up early, and she is reading 5 different books. She starts with gratitude, but she has 5 different books out in front of her at all times. And she picks up one, starts reading it until she's done with that one, and puts it away. And it might just be a couple of pages. It might be a chapter, and then goes on to the next one. And she journals, sets her day. We use something called the Full Focus Planner with Michael Hyatt, and we really enjoy that. And it's got your annual goals that you review, and then you have your weekly big 3 things you got to get done, your daily big 3, and we review that together. But today we started, and we just built a sauna in our home 2 days ago.
Nice.
And we have 2 cold plunges. I'm about to start a podcast around sauna and cold. And so the guests we'll do rounds. We'll do 2 to 3 rounds in the sauna and the cold plunge together. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, the plunge is sponsoring.
And just chit chat in between.
Yeah, chit chat in there. And I can talk super calm in the plunge. And I've done it for 30 minutes before. I've done it
that's
once.
Awesome.
But it's going to be a fun time of like reflection and reactions, and then sit down and have a great conversation, because anyone I take through those practices, they always Olympic gold medalists and Super Bowl champs and authors, musicians, normally 9 out of 10 times say, "Man, I wish this was a podcast. I wish we had this conversation recorded." So we're gonna do that.
I love it.
And so Amy and I did a test run yesterday and today. And so we spent 20 minutes at 200 degrees. I'm going to crank it up more than that. I think moving forward, I think it was 230. And then 38 degrees, 37 degrees in the plunge. And we did that 2 times today. And then right after, we had a smoothie, like you all have a smoothie together. And then we just kind of set the day, and we talked about this podcast and how I'm grateful for it. And so in the sauna, we were talking about the things we're grateful for, and then just dreaming. Today, we dreamt about the wedding some, and who are we going to invite? And we reflected on the proposal, and it was just a really great way to connect. And we probably didn't finish until 11, but normally we finish before that. But today we just took our time, and holidays are coming up, and the girls are out of school, and it was a great way to connect. And since we have that trailhead right outside our door, we normally start with a hike. So we get outside.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, get the morning sun.
Being out in the nature in the morning with that morning sun that's so powerful. We have the beach, so we try to get out on the beach.
Oh,
so
nice.
That's another part.
That's awesome. Well, I think for me, I'm 36, and social media from fighting and the nonprofit that I started, it's an important part of the work, but Amy's so good and disciplined at never starting her day that way. And there was a season, could have been up to a year, where I'd catch myself scrolling in the morning and coming to a realization in the last.
That's pretty common for a lot of people. It's just such a pattern.
I think my brain, it would start so much slower, and I wouldn't have clarity of thought. And I don't really deal with anxiety, but I think the way that starting my day scrolling, whether it's emails, social media, whatever it is, text messages, starting it that way, I think there was an underlying that I might not be too sensitive to, but I think now not doing that, I see that there was underlying anxiety or some sort of uneasiness or tension that I wasn't recognizing, and stopping that. Now
I can feel it just immediately when I look at in news feed. So I'm very, very, I almost have to have a practice around it, and I'll like put up a little force field and say, okay, whatever I'm reading is not going to affect me, but I want to be alert as to what's happening in the world. So I just scan headlines and I play opposite day. Say, okay, whatever this is saying, the truth is probably the opposite or somewhere in between.
That's a great way to think about it.
But the way I look at it, Justin, is that, it's all energy, right? And so when even if you're really intelligent, hey, okay, I'm a positive guy and this is just news, you're consuming information that is vibrationally at a much lower level of energy than what you need to kind of maintain a really positive, abundant mindset. And so you're not going to cognitively notice it, but you will feel like a little bit downer from it because it's the energy you're taking on. I think most people don't recognize how much negative energy they just absorb every day by being plugged into the news and TV and other people's gossip and fear mongering about what's happening in Israel or Ukraine or whatever, whatever the latest doom and gloom is. The scientists say that your brain is wired to be 5 times as negative as it is positive.
Wow.
And it's just all of our conditioning. I have a saying that if you're not training your mind, someone else is, and that someone else is culture, media, government, politics, and it's all negative.
Yeah.
And sometimes the negative comes wrapped in a happy, glad wrapper, it can be shiny and polishy, but it's still negative.
Right.
So you got to be really careful what you let in.
Yeah. It's so true. Well, I think starting our relationship, the first 2 years, I was pretty great. We were in a rhythm together. And then I'm not sure what disrupted it for me personally, but just a busy season of life. Like I got to get some things done. And, I poured myself more into work and the stuff. And the last 3 months, I think I've gotten back in on a great rhythm. And it just is,
That's awesome.
It's life-changing.
I got to tell you though, for you guys at 36, I mean, wow, like you're right in the prime. I turned 60 this year. I feel better than I have in a long time. I feel solid, like strong. And I think that, part of my teaching is that we can just continue to improve and tap in more and more potential, but it takes training and practice.
Yeah.
Right? You got to cultivate your mind to ward off that negativity. You've got to learn to use it to go deeper and tap those well springs of power and intelligence and presence. And you just keep on bringing more and more energy into your body mind system, right? So that you can literally keep these bodies really youthful and vibrant for as long as you need them. And that I learned that from the yogis. That's the yogi way, or the ancient Qigong master. I've studied yoga now for almost 30 years, and the martial arts. So martial arts and yoga are really just different manifestations of the same thing. So I'm on a kind of a mission to teach those principles, but also that we do that for a purpose. And I want to tie this back to you. Like, we all have a unique mission, and it's really important for us to spend enough time in contemplation and silence to find that mission, right? To really discover it. Because if you don't discover it, you're going to live that life of quiet desperation. You may be really successful financially. You may build things in the world, but if it's not in alignment with that purpose or that calling or that mission, then you're still going to feel like you've kind of missed the mark.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that statement?
I do. I absolutely do. And what it made me think of is, well, the times I've gotten quiet and really asked and listened to the universe, the source of love, God, like that's when my whole life changed, like the trajectory.
Right.
For me, martial arts was like for you, it is a meditation. It's a moving meditation.
Moving meditation.
And martial arts changed or saved my life. I grew up getting very heavily bullied. And that's why I found martial arts, was I didn't want to get bullied anymore. That's why I picked up the UFC VHS tapes. I thought, these guys don't get bullied. And so I poured.
Is that how you started?
That's how I started.
Just watching the tapes?
Yeah.
Oh, that's killer.
13 to 15, I started watching the tapes. At 15, I started wrestling. I ended up winning a high school national championship and a Greco-Roman national championship. So out of high school, I went to the Olympic Training Center. But I mean, I could fast forward through that and we can go back to it if you want. But at 23 years old, I had fought on the Ultimate Fighter TV show as the youngest heavyweight at the highest level. And I was getting my hand raised, and I would think, is this it? Is that all?
Yeah.
And there's got to be something more. And I fell into depression and addiction because I broke my arm. I dislocated it, broke it, tore the ulnar collateral ligament, had a basically elbow replacement. And they said I might not be able to fight ever again. And I got hooked. This was 2005, so I got hooked on Oxycontin.
Oxy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just giving it to me like candy. So I actually started my MMA career as an addict to Oxy. And I mean, 4 months of that with 3 doctors giving you 90, 120, 120. It was just a nightmare. It was living hell. And whenever I finally basically said a prayer, God, what do you want me to do with my life? That's whenever everything opened up. And I realized I was fighting against people, but really I was supposed to be fighting for people. And that part just echoed in my soul. And I had this vision. And I know it can sound out there. It can sound a little crazy.
Not to me, you can't.
Okay, awesome. But recently I was in Vegas for a speaking engagement, and the crew took me to the Sphere. And the Sphere, it's completely
saw
all
that
around
last
you.
week.
Were you there? Did you go to?
I didn't go inside it. I drove by it, and I was like, what the heck is that? Wow.
For you or anyone, there's an incredible human story about who we are in humanity and who we are at heart. And it's called Postcards from Earth. And I went and watched that, and it brought tears to my eyes, and it just moved my soul. And whenever it would show different things, it would have a blast of air. And there was a scene in India, and they're throwing all the colorful stuff. And all of a sudden you get hit with air and the smell of jasmine. And it was, it was a full immersive experience. And the reason I bring that up is when I said, God, what do you want me to do with my life? It was like I was dropped into the Sphere. That's the closest thing I could compare it to, but it was even more real than that. I was in the forest. I was walking down a footpath. I heard drumming. I was clearing vines and thickets out of the way. And then I heard singing, a very tonal, tribal singing. And I come into a clearing, and I see these dome huts that are only about 4 or 5 foot tall, and they're covered with leaves. And I acknowledge a man, and he acknowledges me. We don't talk, but we see each other. I know that he's coughing, so he's sick. I can count all his ribs. I just was flooded with this thought that he's hungry, thirsty, poor, sick, oppressed, enslaved, that he calls someone else master. And I come out of the vision, and I felt like they identified as forgotten. They're the forgotten people. And I cried. I didn't just cry. I wept more than any funeral, more than all the funerals combined I've been to, any heartbreak. And I was like, who are these people? Where are these people? And then honestly, I felt a little crazy. I wrote it down, but after trying to
did that really happen? What's all that about?
Yeah.
That was when you were 23 or?
Yes, I was 23 years old. This was 2011. I think it was August because I went in September. And I had experimented with the psychedelics, with shamans and even medical doctors, psychiatrists that would take you through the different ceremonies. And I thought, was that a psychedelic reactivation? Well, no, this was more real, more pure, more, I don't know. It wasn't synthetic. It wasn't induced. Okay, was it a psychotic episode? What was that? And 3 days later, I thought I would never tell anyone this. And so now I'm telling you, and I haven't told many people this, but at least publicly. And 3 days later, I go to a speaking engagement, and it's this guy named Caleb. He's a close friend now, but I was just hearing him talk for the first time. Afterwards, there was a line for him, but he talked about how he lived with the Maasai tribe and a Vanuatu tribe that invented bungee jumping. And he was a wild, kind of out there guy, friends with Bear Grylls, and an adventurer, but a humanitarian, and did missions. And I thought, well, if there's one guy I could tell, maybe it's him. And so I write down my phone number on a piece of paper. I'm waiting in line, and then the line's taking a while. So I go and get my friend's car, and he starts up the ignition, and I go, wait, I've got to tell him something. So I go back in, and I just hand him my phone number and say, hey, when you get some time, I don't want to bombard you right now. You probably want to get home to your wife. And he's like, no, man, tell me now. We might not ever see each other again. And I was like, okay. So I start telling him the vision. By the end of it, he smiles, and I'm like, what? He goes, I know who they are. And I was like,
No kidding.
who? And he goes, they're the Pygmy people. And I'm like, who's that? And he's like, they're in the Congo Basin rainforest. It spans across 8 or 9 African nations. And I was like, who? Where? And he goes, I'm going in 3.5 weeks, and you're coming with me. And
Wow.
yeah,
Cool.
but he started telling me more. He goes, you got to come tell my wife this story, because 3 days ago, the rebels took over the airport. No one could fly in there. The U.S. State Department says no American for any reason should go. And he said, 3 days ago, my team, 3 guys, 3 other men, husbands, fathers, they canceled their trip. And he said, yesterday, my wife said, you're not going alone. You're going to cancel your trip unless you get a sign. And so he goes, you're the sign, come tell her. So I get in his truck. We go to
You're the sign. I love
yeah,
it.
I'm like, oh man. So we go to his house, and I'm thinking, I'm already asking him, how do we postpone this? Can't we delay it? And
Right.
I'm kind of crazy right now. And I had no forethought, I had no idea or plan to go to Africa, even for a safari at that time.
Right.
I'm
right.
focused on fighting. That's who I am. That's what I do, and how to get my life right. And on a new foundation. At this time, I was 11 months sober. And so I had started building, but we get to Caleb's house and we meet Jess, and Jess is pregnant, and she's got a toddler running around. And so I'm shy or nervous, hesitant to tell her. And I tell her the story and the vision, and she looks at Caleb, her husband, and goes, Caleb, you got to take this guy. And then the best thing I could say is, probably the better way to say it is, they started coaching me, because I'm like, hey, let's postpone it to next year. Let's let it calm down. We got to get visas, all this stuff. Like, let's take our time. And they started coaching me. If you don't go, you'll never know. You always wonder what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened. And so you need to go. And to sum it up or bring it about, I'll skip forward a few things, but we get there, land in Uganda, we have no flight to the Congo. And we, by chance,
What are the technical aspects? Like, did you need to get a visa, or like, how did you work through the
I had
State
to-
Department? Did they
I had
think you
to
were crazy?
rush.
What happened?
I had to rush a visa in Washington, D.C. with the Congolese embassy. I had to go. Another crazy story was, I'd gotten back from Haiti after the earthquake, and when I was there was some flooding, and we drove a bus, threw some water in my bag. I should have kept my passport on me, but I learned after this that I had it in the bottom of the bus while we went through water, and my passport got soaked. So at customs, when they go to open my passport, they literally ripped my face off of the passport.
Ouch.
So, or at least it was flopping. And Caleb said, you need to get your passport fixed. And I'm like, yeah, of course. When I Google mapped the nearest passport place in Denver, I just went to it. It's 2 miles from my house. I walk in, it's basically airport security. And I sit down, I tell the woman that I'm going to Congo. She's like, why? I tell her we're seeing if we can go help some people. And it's a scout trip, and we're just going to meet them. And she goes, sit down right there. 30 minutes later, she brings me a warm passport with more pages than I asked for. And she handed it to me and said, I think you're going to need these extra pages. And I'm like, wow, how'd that happen? I thought it was going to take weeks or a week or whatever.
Yeah, no kidding.
So in 30 minutes, I had my passport. We take 3 or 4 planes to get there. We find a missions aviation fellowship pilot that's willing to fly us in. We're circling the runway because they don't know when the last time an airplane landed at this spot. And people are running out of the huts with machetes. And right at first, I'm like, what's going on? But then they're clearing the grass for us so we can land.
Oh, cool.
And we land. We get out and drive for 6 to 8 hours. We sleep. We take motorcycles through the rainforest. I've never been on a motorcycle before. And we get to the river. We take a dugout canoe. That's the Pygmy people traditionally are 4'6", 4'7" for the men. And so a small dugout canoe. And my name now is the Big Pygmy. I used to be the Viking.
You're the Big Pygmy.
Big Pygmy. It
It
wasn't,
must have looked like a giant to them. Oh, God.
the canoe wasn't Big Pygmy sized. And so almost taking on water, we get across. We hike for about 30, 45 minutes. Then we hear drumming. Then we hear singing. We come into a clearing. We see twig and leaf dome huts that are about 4 or 5 feet tall. First guy we meet that acknowledges us, that we say hi to, he's coughing. He's got tuberculosis. We can count every rib. And I got so weak in the knees because the vision was so real and this moment was so surreal that I had to take a knee. And I was weak in the knees. My knees were shaking and never experienced anything like that. It was deja vu times 100. And Caleb, and we also brought Caleb's buddy Colin, they're grabbing my traps and they're like, this is your vision. This is your vision. And it was. And it was mind-blowing because it was like, does stuff like this happen? Can it happen? But it did, to the point to where we stayed a couple of weeks. And at the end of it, Caleb was saying, what are you going to do? And I go, what do you mean, what am I going to do? This problem's way too big. I'm way too small. I do love these people, but I don't know why I was brought here except to show that it's impossible to help in a practical way. They're asking for land. They're asking for water. They're asking for food and farms. And I'm a fighter, man. I don't have the ability to do this.
Right. Can you describe their situation?
Sure.
Like,
Yes.
Weren't they of the land?
Yeah.
And what was
They're
the problem with the water around there?
Yeah.
What's happening?
They're the first people group of Africa. Some anthropologists say they go back 60,000 years as a tribe. And
Wow.
no, they're the first citizens of Africa, the first citizens of any of the nations of Africa, yet none of them have any land for themselves. And it's all been stolen from them, or they've been enslaved on the land. They have no clean water. My second trip, I held a young boy named Andy Bo that died in my hands. It was waterborne disease, and that forever changed my life. It ripped my heart apart and forever gripped it. And I bought the shovel and the casket and dug his grave, and that changed me. But it wasn't just because of waterborne disease. It was also because of, I don't know if you call it rejection or neglect, but definitely oppression. His mom was told the first time she took him to the clinic, you're too dirty to come in here. That's what the nurse told her. And the second time, they had begged for the money. I was in another village, and they had begged for the money. It was $1 for the pills. It was $3 for the one-shot cure. It was too late in the game for the pills. They had about $3.50 of Congolese franc, and they took everything they had: a chicken, firewood, charcoal, eggs, and they laid it on the doorsteps of the medical clinic, which is really a mud hut with a tin roof. And the doctor said the real reason, which was, we won't waste our medicine on a pygmy animal, and turned him away. So that's why I held him and buried him. And I just couldn't reconcile it in my mind that any human being would ever be treated this way. And that's whenever I knew and realized, like they had named me 3 days before that, the chief, Leo May, he named me Efeosa, and the neighbors were calling me Mbuti Pygmy. And so Efeosa means the man that loves us, and Mbuti Pygmy means the big pygmy. And so I love those names and I cherish them. And actually, probably 3 weeks ago, I was given a new name in Uganda with the Batwa Pygmy people, which is Olengama, which is, there's a king of the Batwa Pygmy people. And we went through a ceremony, and I was initiated in as the tribe and adopted in his family. And Olengama is his father's name. So we got new land. We've got over 3,000 acres of land for the Pygmy people now.
No kidding.
And that land, 60 acres, they took me to his father's grave. They got some of the dirt. I didn't know what they were doing then, but that night they asked me to stay up. It's just me, the elders, and they painted me with the dirt from the grave and ash, the forehead, the nose, the lips, the cheeks, my chest and shoulders and arms. We had this ceremony, and it was awesome. It was beautiful. We stayed up till 4 a.m. singing and dancing and telling stories. And the Andy Bo part, I'm a little all over the place, but 12 years later, we're finally building a hospital, a real one, in honor of Andy Bo, where none of the Pygmy people in that region will ever be denied. It'll be open to all. It'll serve everyone. But we're building the hospital, the school. We've done homes and water wells. We provided clean water to over 50,000 people. But we equip them with the tools, educate them with the knowledge of how to drill it and do it for themselves, and then empower them to be the change in their own community. Because that's the sustainable way, I believe, is them having ownership, them being them being the solution to their local problem. Because a little bit in the world today, and it's more of the old school model, but it's still holding strong, is that there's 230,000 broken wells in Africa right now. That's billions of wasted charitable dollars. The traditional model is punch a hole in the ground and on to the next one. and there's no real training. There's no real relationship. It's not locally affordable. It's not locally accessible. And I think we have to think long-term and also follow through. And what happened when you drive your car 3,000 miles, it's going to need a oil change, or, tires are going to wear out and you need to get it maintained. And same thing with a water well that's serving thousands of people. Like you have to think that way.
That example is exactly what's wrong with the global institutional approach, right? To aid, really. It's like, let's just throw some money at it, or you throw money at whoever's in power, and of course they steal it all, or they use it for, their warfaring, or send a team to build a well and then move on and build the next well, or build a school and then move on and build, and then it all falls apart.
And I've seen
not bad intentioned. Yeah. It's good intentioned. It's just short-term thinking.
Yep.
It comes from that kind of, like, that, hate to say it, that kind of global north elitist perspective that money's going to solve everything. And it really isn't. You got to have a local collaborative approach, with people who are willing, like you, to be on the ground and have long-term kind of loving relationships with people. Yeah. I really commend you on that. You did jump forward. Like you went, like, from meeting these people to all of a sudden, you guys have helped them reclaim 60,000 acres, which is incredible. Yeah. Can you, there's some questions I have, like, how do you communicate with them?
Yeah. So I speak some broken Swahili, but it depends on where I am. So we normally have translators, or I always have a translator. That's one of my best friends. I've known him for more than 12 years now, and he's like a brother. But I was able to speak it better, and then COVID and separation and not being there, but I can hear it still well, and speaking it is slower. But in Uganda, where we have really focused our work over the last 3 years, it's really hard in Congo to build something that...
Is that because of all the resources and the fighting over the resources?
All the fighting.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
You can do land, you can drill water wells, but to build, like, homes and structures and a health center, a school, all that, it's tough in conflict zones. So Uganda's very safe in comparison. And we're behind 3 different military bases, and you have to go past all 3 of them and up a mountain to get to this new land. And so we felt like it's one thing to go a mile wide, and that's kind of that show up, blow out technique, and announce your arrival at the parade and throw a party and get your pictures and then peace out. But it's another thing to go a mile deep with one community or a few communities. And that's kind of where we've pivoted to say, this community over the next 10, 15, 20 years, we're fully committed. It'll be high support at the beginning as they're learning and growing and standing on their own 2 feet. And then it's going to shift as we build capacity in them, and they have the more leadership roles, which they're already taking up. And it's been a beautiful thing.
Does that start to ripple out to other Pygmy communities? I mean, they are in mutual support, or they're not like in us versus them, are they?
No. So the new land with the 60 acres, so it's 3,000 acres total. Oh, more than that, like 3,100. But the 60 acres, and that's about to get bigger too, around them are all people groups or tribes that have also been displaced. And it might be over the last 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, or just in the last couple of years. So they all know what it's like to be the new people on the block, and they welcomed them with open arms. And they know the school is for their children too. The health center is for their children too. And the maternity ward is so needed. My second to last trip, which was also 2023, I had malaria. I went down the mountain. I'm at the health center, and we had a woman that went into labor early. Her child was turned the wrong way. We lost both the mother and the child. It was like, we didn't know about it as it was happening, but it was, it's a 2.5 hour walk to the health center. And when they get there, oftentimes it's pretty empty because it's governmentally ran, which we're going to have government support and work with them, but it's going to be privately ran and operated. So that way, we know that there's all the medications and the bandages and everything that's needed. So I'm really excited. We have a $2 million in-kind gift from Project Cure for all the medical supplies. Have to raise $1.8 million to build the structures, but that's everything. The health center, the school, the community hub, the vocational school, the bio toilets, the fish pond, the beehives, and farming. And so,
Amazing.
yeah, we're stoked. It's pretty exciting because we have a 22-year architect that's German, that's lived in Uganda for 20 years, has a Ugandan wife and kids. And he said this is why he got into architecture, is bringing it all together for a community. And he was showing us the plans, and we're getting 3D models so we can show our donors.
Hi, Mark Devine here from SealFit. After 2 years of development, I'm super stoked to announce the launch of SealFit supplements and our first product, SealFit Electro Greens. This is the highest quality organic greens you can find, combined with electrolytes into one powerful supplement. Take with 8 ounces of water in the morning or add to your smoothie to get your day kicked off right with the proper nutritional supplementation and hydration support. And you can also use it as a pick-me-up booster during the day or after a workout. It dissolves immediately, and believe it or not, it tastes great. I've had many testimonials already saying it's the best tasting greens that they have ever tried. So, hoo-yah, SealFitSupplements.com, or you can find it on Amazon by searching for SealFit Electro Greens. Hoo-yah. Let's do this. Divine out. That is delicious.
Hey, Justin, so what's going to prevent it from happening again? What happened to them, the displacement, the slavery, what's going to prevent it from happening again?
That's a great question. So, at least in Uganda, which is different, we work in Congo and Uganda. In Uganda, the situation was different in the fact that they were removed from the rainforest. They aren't allowed to live there anymore, and they're hunter-gatherers. Yet, in the name of sustainability, the most sustainable people in the world were kicked out.
I know, it's insane, isn't it? Don't get me going on that.
Yeah. So we tried, and we lobbied, and we petitioned, and we wanted to buy back a portion of the rainforest. There's some small that they could actually live in there, and it just wasn't going to happen. So we have land bordering the rainforest that looks down into the rainforest, their ancestral home. I mean, I was there 3 weeks ago. That was the best trip I've had in more than 12 years. And it was with local, state, and national government officials. And we have their full support. And the Batwa, it's their land in their name. That is the strongest thing in most African courts, and especially in Uganda, is buying the land in the name of a people group, a tribe.
Right.
It's theirs that they'll hand down from generation to generation. We celebrated the 4 different land titles. And I think here's one segue is for a healthy, happy, thriving community, I think they need at least 7 basics, which is land to call their own, water that's safe to drink, food or farming sustenance. They need housing, good shelter to be out of the elements. Then they need healthcare, education, and sustainable livelihoods. And so that is what we do. I've been on Rogan's podcast a lot, and a lot of times fans come up and they're like, hey, you're the guy that drills wells for the pygmies in the Congo. We do a lot more than that. I'm grateful they know the story, but we do not just community development, but community empowerment. We go much slower than most organizations do. And I think that's allowed us to see blind spots, or them to come up to us in a time where we're not going too fast, to where we sit down and we ask questions, and they give us suggestions of what they want, what they need.
You're not imposing a perspective on them or your way.
There's no cookie cutter solution or blueprint that works in every community and every culture in different countries.
Right. That's awesome. It's mind-blowing to me that leaders, I put air quotes around that, of countries and like the global institutions back to that, aren't aware that the Aboriginals are stewards of our rainforests.
Right.
The balance of the homeostatic balance of Mother Earth is maintained by these stewards.
Yeah.
It's actually necessary for them to do their work.
Yes.
And so to remove them from the rainforest in the name of sustainability is absolutely insane.
Yes.
And it's a joke. It's a joke, right? That they're removing them because they want access to the resources.
Right.
Fortunately, it seems to me I only know this because I'm finishing up my doctorate in global leadership and change. So I've gotten to study this stuff in the last few years, and I even did some papers on using Aboriginal kind of concepts of sustainability and stewardship, which are in really contradiction to the elitist kind of United Nations sustainability goals. You know what I mean? Which says that we're going to all be sustainable and world peace by 2030. Like, really? All right. Yeah. How much money do we spend on the UN every year for them to put out that kind of silliness?
Yep.
There seems to be a growing awareness,
Yeah.
and it's coming from people like you and in conversations like this. It's really the influencer leaders, the compassionate and passionate individuals out there who are starting to like agitate in a positive way, not in a conflictual way, for change. And that's starting to empower a lot of the locals because now they're starting to realize that there are people on their side.
Yes.
And like you probably were aware that Brazil had a kind of a victory because Brazil was trying to like claim that any Aboriginal or Native who hadn't like had a firm claim on some land in their rainforest down there were going to lose their claim and their rights. I think they had to have had a claim in by 1989 or something. I could be wrong. That whole bill was thrown out or paused and then thrown out because of the uproar from the natives.
Wow.
And a lot of the influencers. So people are starting to wake up that the rainforests are critical to our global ecosystems. You want to solve global warming, let's get our rainforests back.
Yeah. Well, just on that, 12 years ago, whenever I would go to Congo, I would almost land in the rainforest. Actually, There's times we did land in the rainforest. Now it's a minimum of a 4-hour, but more likely a 6 and 8 hour drive to get to the same rainforest.
That's incredible.
From the same airport. And now the roads drive a lot slower, but because it's not tarmac and things like that, it's like off-roading for the most part. But still, I think they said the size of Texas or more has been cut down in the Congo Basin rainforest just in the last 20 years. And
that's cut down for farming, or what's the usage?
A lot of it is for charcoal, but I would say most of it is the rare hardwoods that are going to China and India and all over the world.
Just for the trees. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, mahogany and all sorts of other huge trees. When I would be in there, so one of the things that affected the Pygmy people was they're hunter-gatherers, or were. But whenever chainsaws were invented, it made it really hard for them to continue to provide. They had a symbiotic relationship with their neighbors because they had the bushmeat, the protein. In fact, they had the upper hand for the most part because they would trade for corn and beans and potatoes and things like that. But then they weren't able to provide it for their neighbors because they had to have it for themselves. And so a little bit of conflict started and other things, but then those neighbors started destroying the rainforest with the influence of people from the West. And so then they weren't able to provide sustenance for themselves either. And then it made them vulnerable, and land was stolen and they were enslaved and put to work, destroying the rainforest they actually worship. And they're not actually much part of that, but sometimes it's forced labor to cut down these trees. And they literally believe that some of these ancient trees host the spirit of their grandfather or their family members. And when those trees fall, it sounds like thunder. But you can see through the canopy of the rainforest, there's no clouds out right now. Why does it sound like thunder? It's because these trees you could drive an 18-wheeler through are falling down. And it's devastating.
If all this stopped, would it grow back? Or do we need to
Good thing about the Congo Basin rainforest, at least, is the saying is if you spit a seed out, a tree's going to grow. And it's very, very fertile. And we've replanted tens of thousands of trees. So this last trip, we did over 800. And yeah, we're trying to bring back the rain. So they weren't allowed to live in the rainforest anymore. So we're trying to bring the rainforest back to them on their land.
That's awesome. So what's next for you? Just more of this, and or do you have other kind of projects and things on your plate?
We started with talking about the plunge and sauna and me doing a podcast. The thing I'm most excited about is the owner was in my home yesterday, and they're donating $300,000 to us to do the health center, the school, and they're just all in.
Oh, wow.
They helped us
Cool.
to get approved for 1% for the planet. So that is sustainable nonprofits. And this architect, he built with local materials, but it's built to last. And so I think we're identifying the next communities we'll move into. We already have two selected, and I don't know if you happen to know, you talked about sustainability and writing a book on it, that there's a guy named Bernard Amade, and he is the founder of Engineers Without Borders. And he is on our board of directors. And he's wrote maybe 8 or 9 books on sustainability. He's now calling this his legacy project, that
Great.
that most nonprofits work in a way that's siloed and don't work together in collaboration or with the community.
Right.
And so how can we do this in a way that is everything, and building the community all up at once, slowly, but at once, and making sure we're not leaving out any of the important steps. So it's taking a lot of the focus. It's kind of putting the blinders on and saying, we're going to do this right and with excellence, and hopefully have a proof of concept to where we can go on and do it in elsewhere, other places, but also hopefully open sourcing this and allowing other communities to learn from our mistakes and to repeat the successes. And if they want to do it, this was our approach, and this is how we documented it. And this is the game plan. Here's the playbook.
Here's the playbook. I love that. And it's so important for nonprofits and NGOs to be able to work together and, set their egos at the door. That's what we've done with we have a veteran, right now it's a veteran focused organization called the Courage Foundation.
Cool.
But we want to expand the focus in the next year or two. As you know, fundraising, especially in the early years, it's a challenge.
It's tough. Hardest thing I've ever done. It's easier to get in a cage. But
we've tried to platform it to where, like our fundraisers are also fundraisers for other, charities doing similar work, tangentially related, and I think that's what you're talking about. It's really important that, charitable organizations that are doing this kind of really solid work have a collaborative approach to raising money and to doing their service.
Yeah. Probably for your organization and mine, I think there's a new wave of support. It's always great I mentioned a big donor in the plunge, but the lifeblood is the monthly donors, the people that say, we believe in you, and here's $5 a month, or here's $40 a month. Yeah. And this is what
well, people want to see the impact.
Yes.
They're tired of seeing money just go up, or tired of just doing it for a tax, refund or whatever credit. Right. It's got to be impactful. So when you can demonstrate an impact like you have, and like we do with the Courage Foundation with our vets with post-traumatic stress, then it's inspiring, and I think more and more people want to participate in that. Do you ever let donors participate on the ground? We
haven't yet. We did bring Bernard, but he's a engineer and has done some incredible things. Not let him. We invite him because when 5 seconds out of the truck, he was like, wind turbine here, solar here. It was awesome. It was perfect. We might do a vision trip with some donors, but also where we go it's not easy for a lot of people from our culture and context and country, that we're going to build a guest house. And whenever that's up and running, we'll probably be bringing medical missions teams, some people that have sustainable skills or vocational training that they can pass on. The one thing we try to steer away from is kind of maybe the term voluntourism, where it's like, come over and paint a building and you're taking the job of the local painter. But we're exploring that, because I did bring someone, I won't get into too many details for their sake and just my memory. It was just one of the worst days. Congo is so unsafe. Uganda is different. And now that we've switched our work there, but man, we were held at gunpoint. Someone was assaulted in the worst kind of way. And I was right there. And it was really, really tough and difficult. We didn't think we were going to make it out alive. And so that was the precedent of we don't take many people with us. But in Uganda, it's much safer. And if we have a guest house and can show and celebrate and people experience their beautiful culture, because before we go, I'll at least share 2 of 3 Swahili proverbs that I absolutely love, that changed my life. And one was, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And a lot of people are looking at that one now in our culture. But when I learned it, I never heard it, never read it, never seen it. But that part of community is just how they live. It's who they are. It's how they breathe. They struggle together, they celebrate together, they suffer together and laugh together and cry together, and they're never alone. And I think that for me and my depression and addiction, and I would say even on the verge of, well, Dr. Amen said I do have PTSD from some of the things, and I didn't know how to handle it or deal with it, and I tried to do it alone. And that Swahili proverb, like, definitely changed my life. It's, if you want to go fast, go alone.
Awesome.
If you want to go far, go together. And the other one is, for your audience, like, sometimes people maybe hear my story or your story or some of these other incredible guest stories, and they think, well, they can do it, but I can't make a difference like that. And I'm like, no, all of us can make a difference, and everyone should try. And the Swahili proverb is, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. And tongue in cheek, and it's funny, but I've had malaria, and the first time I had it, in 5 days, I lost 33 pounds. And I have fought guys 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", and fought a guy 6'10". And none of those guys, I finished those guys in the first round, but a mosquito, less than a gram in weight. And these guys were 265, like a mosquito almost took my life. And if that can make that big of a difference in my life or in the world, like, how much more can each one of us individually, and then going beyond that collectively, make it in the lives of others? Like, we can make a meaningful impact, each one of us.
Every one of us, 100% agree. We can be the change we want to see at scale now, right? Because of conversations like this and technology. So it's on us to set course to make a difference, but we got to start with ourselves.
Right.
You couldn't be doing what you're doing if you hadn't done the work to clear the fog and the haze of the darkness, and to get over the addiction, and to then, find the healing. But you found it through service.
Yes.
That's a powerful lesson for everyone, right? If you're stuck in a rut, turn your attention to someone who needs help.
Yep, definitely. Purpose through service changed or saved my life. And then I would say, on the doing the work, Amy, it was something beautiful. We were having a conversation early on in our relationship, and she's like, Justin, you you must love yourself like your life depends on it. And she asked me why. And I go, she goes, because it does. And I'm like, wow, that's really good. And so learning that process over the last 3 years has been it might be the biggest gift I've ever given myself, is like, the more I love myself, just those morning meditations, practices, like, I'm charged up to do more in the world and with the nonprofit. And if I was just doing one or the other, I don't think it would be as impactful or meaningful as if I'm doing it.
No, we call it self-mastery in service.
Ooh.
So initially the self-mastery precedes service, right? Because you got to build the energy to serve and the positivity and everything. Ultimately, they are one and the same.
I love that.
Through your own mastery, you're able to serve others. And through that service, it's helping you, because whatever you put out there comes back to you multiplied.
Wow.
Great work, man. You are incredible. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was an honor to meet you, Justin. Fight for the Forgotten. That's the charity. What's the web property? How do people reach out to you to help you?
Fightfortheforgotten.org, or you can go to fftf.org as well. And if they want to become a monthly donor, we would invite you and say, thank you for joining forces with us. We're going to make it count. We're going to make sure that puts love and compassion in action. And so we're really grateful for the support. If people want to follow me on social media or Instagram, it's at the Big Pygmy. Oh, yay. That's someone there. Hey, yo. But it's the Big Pygmy. And we're just so grateful. I'm really honored to have spent this time with you today. And I've heard so many great things about you, and it's all true.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. Well, thank you. And ditto. I'm going to go donate a monthly amount. And I look forward to being on your email list. That's, that's part of it. I want to keep track of you, and let me know if there's anything that we can do to help.
Okay. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so much. 2024 is looking really bright. Yeah. We got a lot of work to do, but it's going to be fun and all worth it.
I totally agree. All right, Justin. Well, bless you, my friend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Take care.
Tell that new fiance of yours to stay on you like white on rice for that practice.
Will do. Will do.